What isn't like it is in the movies? Car accidents. People don't just lightly bleed from their heads then die. They are some of the goriest, most traumatic deaths I've seen outside of combat footage. Carrying an unconscious person. Found out the hard way when my wife was sick and fainted. An unconscious body is surprisingly limp and slippery. Try to lift them by the armpits? No. That just makes the arms flail and they'll slip right through your fingers. Try to lift them from under the knees and around the back? No. Their back won't stay stiff enough and their ass will just sink to the floor. Not to mention their head is rolling around the whole time. In movies they never say, "goodbye," on the phone. They just hang up. Walking into a bar and the news is showing a story about your exact situation. Driving. Unlike in the movies, you really have to pay attention to the road. Parking too. It's very rare to get a space just outside where you need to be. I found the Air Bud series really set unrealistic standards for dogs. Air conditioning vents silently and easily being removed or put in. Getting hit in the head. No John, you won't wake up with a minor headache 10 minutes later. You'll wake up a decade later with a wheelchair. Ripping out your IV is a terrible idea. Access denied. Override. Oh okay. Since you put it that way. Access granted. Hacking. Basically, everything about guns. Drywall and furniture don't stop bullets. Reloading is a thing. Please stop cocking your weapon to look cool. Half of your rounds are on the ground. And so many more. Digging a grave. Soil is much harder than what movies pretend. Taking matters into your own hands to defeat an entire group of criminals. Living in a bad neighborhood. Most days nothing major happens. Waking up. You do not wake up fully refreshed, dressed, hair done, and the blankets are still neat on the bed. Talking on the phone. Working in an office. I really question whether a screenwriter or director has worked a regular 9-to-5 office job a day in their lives. Breakfast in America. The mom makes a big spread with pancakes, bacon and eggs, all that stuff. Just for someone to pick up a slice of toast and rush off. I'd be super pissed. A cough is not usually the sign of a terminal illness. One man shooting at 20 men does not have a better chance of killing them than 20 men firing at one man. Most laptop computers are probably not powerful enough to override the communication systems of any invading alien civilization. Freelance helicopter pilots are not always eager to accept bookings from international terrorist organizations because the job will require them to shoot total strangers and will end in their own certain death as the helicopter explodes in a ball of flames. You can't always find a chainsaw when you need one. Being blonde and pretty does not make it possible to become a world expert in nuclear fission at age 22. It is unlikely that a man will show no pain while taking the most ferocious beating but will wince when a woman tries to clean his wounds. Conversations really. In real life it is usually a lot of figuring out what the hell the actual, underlying, meaning is when someone is saying something. In movies the scriptwriter came up with a solid quip for a response. Teachers or people with low-paying jobs owning or renting massive houses, apartments. Suppressors and hand grenades. Suppressors, silencers, in movies are way too quiet. And sound like a staple gun going off. In reality, they make a gun quieter. But they very much still sound like a gun. And anyone around will still hear it. Grenades in movies always make a giant explosion with a fireball. That makes bad guys fly through a window or ragdoll across a field. In real life, they make a loud bang. And a puff of smoke. They just throw shrapnel everywhere and make people bleed profusely. The lack of farts, peeing, and shitting. Sex. CPR. It's the trope that causalities in the movies always come around at the very point during CPR that the other's characters are all giving up on them surviving. The chances of someone recovering from chest compressions and breaths alone are very slim. It's the critical intervention of a defibrillator that gives the casualty the greatest chance of survival. Blackjack dealers are not sleight of hand masters with the ability to magic up wins. They are as surprised at the cards coming out as anyone. Going through glass. That shit is dangerous as fuck. Potential major lacerations every time. Speaking from my experience as well as 2 others. Drugs. High school never ends. You can't outrun an explosion. Hackers don't type furiously on a keyboard to break into a system. Love at first sight rarely leads to a happily ever after. The hero doesn't always save the day in the nick of time. Villains don't always have an evil laugh or wear all black. Cars don't explode when they crash. Nobody can fight off a group of attackers without getting a scratch. People don't always have witty comebacks ready in every situation. The geeky girl doesn't always end up with the popular guy. Guns. No. You don't flinch that much when hit by a bullet. There's the possibility that your body does not even process being hit by a bullet altogether. No. Headshots will not make you shoot your head backwards and slowly fall down. If you catch a bullet to the head, you drop like a sack of potatoes. Nothing. Lights out. Pretty much everything. Nobody has that many interesting things happen to them. Nobody is as quick and witty as movies would have you believe. Watching a real person's life would be boring with very long stretches between even slightly significant events. Hacking doesn't involve furious typing. It's more like running an antivirus scan to check for what the IT department forgot to lock down. Or sending a phishing email. Either way, it involves more waiting than typing. They remove the headrests from cars in movies so you can see the actor better. Getting shot is not a flesh wound. Pointing at a girl in a bar and saying, "You see that girl? I'm going to marry her someday," and then somehow doing so. Death. We're a lot more brittle than you'd think. Yet in the moments before death you might last long enough to tell your family you love them on a stranger's phone. Especially in kung fu, karate fights. Bad guys respectfully wait for their turn to be taken out by the main guy. They never attack all together at the same time. Your wife, partner, so going into labor and giving birth. They always show the water breaking. Then the woman is rushed to the hospital, where she's promptly placed in a wheelchair, carted into a room, and then tilde goes into labor tilde where she yells and pushes and generally does the thing. This labor process appears to take anywhere from 1 to 8 hours in any given media outlet, barring any given complication that extends her stay. Let me tell you, when my wife had our first child, it did not go like that at all. She had to be induced. She spent 2 days mostly doing nothing but sleeping in the hospital bed. I was getting frustrated, bored, and tired, and even at one point asked her, "Shouldn't you be doing something? Like pushing? By the way, terrible idea. 0/10 do not recommend saying that to your partner. But yeah, the media always makes it seem rushed and efficient and glazes over the actual timeline." Sharks. Movies make you think they are bloodthirsty man-eaters who kill humans for sport. Although they aren't 100% harmless. Most sharks don't actually like the taste of human and will spit it out. They also often say shark-infested waters, which is like saying human-infested buildings. It pissed me off to no extent how bad they portray sharks in movies. Prison. Most people are just trying to do their time, and not let the time do them. There are fights, but probably no more or less than high school. You got a bunch of guys living together with no women, except for, like, nurses. So sometimes the testosterone spills over. Mostly these guys just ask for forms, paper and envelopes to write letters, or hygiene products, mostly. TP. Movies and TV only show you the bad shit. As far as the officers beating a guy up for stepping out of line, can't speak for all of them, but the ones I've seen have cameras covering literally everywhere. It might happen, but if it did, the inmate would have a lawsuit and the officer would be out of a job. They'd have multiple angles of the assault on camera shown in court. Inmate jumps on you. Green light. But just hauling off and hitting him because you can? No can do. Also, they outnumber staff over 10 to 1. So why do that in the first place? Besides, they're people, too. We don't give them personal information. But we do bullshit with them. Whatever sport is currently airing is a popular topic of discussion. You want to be able to talk to these guys? Pay at least minimal attention to sports. Aside from religion, it's the only language they know. They gotta live there and staff gotta work there. So you gotta find a way to get along. You gotta find common ground. This constant warfare they portray in the movies just ain't real life. I'm no Ryan fucking Gosling. She's no Emma fucking Stone. There's no Lala in my land. If I get out of the car in the middle of the traffic and start dancing, they would either beat me or arrest me, probably both. Happy endings. Even the absolute best day of your life ends and you wake up next day. You commute to your job. Put up with your boss's bullshit. Get irritated by the never-ending gossip of Megan from work and go back to home to a cup of instant ramen and beef on Netflix. John Wick hasn't eaten in 4 movies. Okay. Scrolled long enough and haven't seen anyone bring up family dynamics. I personally spent way too much of my life longing for a family life like those in the movies. Where everyone has their quirks and dysfunctions but still manage to be a family unit and have each other's backs when shit gets tough. And they have that unconditional love. Reality is nothing like the movies. And not all mothers are as loving and doting on their daughters like I nearly always see in movies. I can promise my birthgiver was my nemesis from early on. Leaving half-eaten plates of food. I can't eat right now. Of course you can't. You're too busy being in a movie. Amish people. I am from Amish country. Ohio. My first job was bussing tables at an Amish food buffet for tourists. Amish people during their teen years smoke, cuss, make their own wine, moonshine, grow weed and cook meth. They host massive, 1,000-plus people, field parties, and charge cover fees that will earn them thousands of dollars. They buy secret cars and stash them in fields away from their parents. They take what they consider once-in-a-lifetime trips to see Pittsburgh or Myrtle Beach, because they will not visit these destinations in adulthood when they are bound to simple lives after they join the church at 18. The adults sometimes continue this behavior, but it's much more hidden in older individuals. There is an understanding that teens, in Rumspringa, will misbehave. But as an adult who is an official church member, this would be unacceptable. Adults will, however, have cell phones for work and vehicles such as farm trucks or large family vans. Their treatment of women is somewhat more accurate. Definitely second-class citizens, viewed as property, and as baby machines. I knew a few women who fled to escape forced marriages. I knew more who left just in general, to seek real education or real love. Their existence is difficult, and I imagine most grown Amish women suffer from extreme Stockholm syndrome. Silencers on guns. Romance. No 16-year-old me. Not all boys are 6 feet plus supermodels with abs, a chiseled jawline and no acne, and they certainly won't just randomly show up at your door with a smirk and hang out with you even though you have nothing in common until he suddenly falls in love with you. Even if you date the guy, you certainly won't not fight at times. And lastly, you probably won't even last all throughout high school and college and get married because you'll both change and go through different situations. You'll probably break up and date a dozen other guys before you finally settle with someone who looks nothing like the tall, handsome guy you wanted, but at least he'll have an interesting personality and makes you genuinely happy. How younger people talk. Every time there is a teenager or young adult in a movie, it always sounds like what a 40-year-old person thinks a teenager sounds like. They think watching 5 TikToks is enough research. Wedding cake tasting. My fiancé and I recently went and she expected it like in the movies where we would get a bunch of different slices to try. Instead we got a taste of the pastry for the vanilla cake in little plastic cups of what the layers could be, and we had to mix and match everything ourselves to pick what we wanted. The whole time she kept telling me that this isn't what she was promised by rom-coms. Being talked to by the police. In the movies, people keep fixing their car, working on their construction site, or walking while they talk, etc. If the police show up to question you about something, you're puckering up and standing still. America. I grew up in Lebanon and moved here at 18. My first 18 years I watched American movies and fell in love with the apparent culture. Americans fighting for the underdog, fighting against racism, fighting for women, protecting women, cops doing real investigations, the fair judicial system, the great American college system, great medical system. I learned after being here for over 20 years that we're a mess. So much more work to do, but still love this country like no other. America. At Christmas, you buy your young kids toys. They show enthusiasm and spend all day playing with those toys. This does not happen. They play with them for a few minutes, then get bored and play with all their old toys or the box. Source: My 2-year-old. In real life, people don't eat by moving food around with cutlery and absorbing the nutrients telepathically. People don't suffocate to death in a second. Injected substances don't immediately take effect. Loon birds are not on every part of the planet. Loon call in movies. Glass isn't that weak and regardless doesn't break like that. People have peripheral vision. If a bad guy is standing beside you, you can still see them. You're not that popular. The entire town doesn't know your name. Cars aren't that durable. Bullies are much worse. They are much more pleasant in movies. Edit. Oh shit lol. I said I real life. There's usually at least one person who corrects mistakes like that. I fixed it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.